Andrew. Yep.
You aware this is live?
Come sit over here.
I would like to invite the catafalque party to take up their positions. Those who are able, please stand. Please be seated. Good afternoon, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, all friends of the 2nd Commandos. My name is Andrew Strickland, and I am the grandson of 2nd Commando George Strickland, and I'll be leading the service today. A special welcome to those who are attending our services for the first time and to our Timorese friends. Welcome to this, the 76th annual commemorative service of the 2nd Commando Association of Australia, and it's the 83rd anniversary of the involvement of the 2nd Commandos on Timor. I know that this service and the association's activities were really important to my grandfather and my grandmother for all their lives. At this stage, I would like to acknowledge the custodians of the land of which we meet today, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and their elders past, present and future. Please be upstanding for the national anthem. Please be seated. Would anyone laying a wreath please come forward? I would now like to welcome Amelia Crossing, granddaughter of Warwick Crossing and the daughter of long-serving community member Rob Crossing, to give this year's address.
Many thanks to the Association for giving me the opportunity to speak to you this afternoon. I'm told that an address like this one is intended to give one person the chance to speak about his or her personal circumstances in a way that is relevant to the men of the Second and the East Timorese. I'm a 25-year-old recently graduated teacher. Compared to most of the men of the Second and all the East Timorese who help them, I come from a life of real privilege. I've not served in the military. I want to speak about my family's history as it relates to two things. First, the idea of selflessly doing things for someone else's benefit. And second, following a calling or profession that serves the greater good, without its main focus being the making of money. Where do I fit into this? As some of you will know, my dad, Rob Crossing, is in the Second Commando Association because his dad, his uncle, and his legatee, Archie Campbell, were all in the unit. However, an important historical aspect of this starts with my great-grandfather, Walter Crossing. Walter Crossing was an amazing Australian war hero. World War I began when he was 18 and studying to be a teacher. He immediately put his studies on hold and joined the army. On the ship on the way to Gallipoli, Walter, being a fairly strong-willed young man, argued with a sergeant about the withholding of food. He was promptly court-martialed and found guilty. Whereas a guilty person would ordinarily have been put in the stocks, those in command simply decided that this young troublemaker would instead be put ashore at Gallipoli with the others. Walter did indeed fight at Gallipoli and was wounded, and he was fortunate to have been evacuated to a British hospital ship, which took him to Malta and then to Britain. Before long, he had recovered, and he was very keen to once again serve king and country. An opportunity arose for him to fight in an armoured car unit that became known as the Tsar's British Squadron, which was actually part of the Royal Navy. He fought in Persia before the unit was sent to Russia to help the king's old mate, the Tsar, in the Russian Revolution. Long story short, he was a very gallant soldier, and several promotions and many medals came his way. By the time he returned to Australia, the young troublemaker had been promoted to the rank of captain, and he had received a long list of medals from the Brits and the Russians. Most of you will know that John Burridge deals in military antiques, including medals. As I list Walter Crossing's medals, you'll probably hear John salivating. Walter was awarded a very impressive list of military honours. Distinguished Service Order, Distinguished Service Cross, 1914-15 Star, General Service Medal, North Persian Medal, Victory Medal, Order of St. George, Order of St. Vladimir, Order of St. Anne 2nd Class, Order of St. Stanislas 2nd Class, Order of St. Anne 3rd Class, Order of St. Stanislas 3rd Class, and mentioned in dispatches. He received his DSO and DSC from King George V at Buckingham Palace on the 15th of May 1919. I'm told that the Russian medals are all pretty special, and to receive so many of them is very rare. One of them apparently came with a hereditary honour, but the Russian Revolution put an end to that. So, my still young great-grandfather, the one who was court-martialed on the way there, returns from the war as an officer and a big-time decorated hero. I'm told he was a very humble man who spoke little about his military achievements. Although I suspect that he had the smarts and character to be a bigwig, like a captain of industry or some kind of VIP, he finished his teaching qualifications and became a schoolmaster in a variety of rural posts in WA. Not long after returning to Australia, he married Mabel, a nurse, and they had 5 children. Walter began his teaching career as the sole teacher in a string of country schools. The growing family moved from Carnarvon to Nanga Brook to Northampton before moving to Armidale, which was still a country town at that time. Therefore, my grandfather Warwick and his brother Dick had a mostly rural upbringing in a family that was loving but was never flush with funds. Warwick was raised in a home in which the importance of fighting for king and country was made clear. He was never keen on school, and at the end of grade 7 was allowed to move to Darkin to work in a shop run by an aunt. From all reports, young Warwick lacked self-esteem. When the opportunity arose to join the Second, he lied about his age when he was only 16 and took on the role of a sniper in a commando squadron at the age of 17. This was a chance to prove himself. His older brother Dick had joined the Navy. It probably sounds like I'm making this up, but when Dick's submarine stopped at East Timor in 1942, Dick deserted from the Navy to find his brother Warwick, which he did. Dick was allowed to unofficially fight with the Second, and he stayed with them until they left Timor. At the end of the war, he received an honourable discharge from both the Australian Army and Navy, the first time that had ever been done. I certainly don't want to gloss over the efforts and the sacrifices of the men of the 2nd Second or the East Timorese who helped them. We are here to pay tribute to all that they did, and I honour and respect every one of them. However, I'm limited by time and by the fact that I'm focusing on my family. Going back to Walter Crossing, father of Warwick and Dick, by the time World War II came along, he was the headmaster of Como Primary School. He decided that it wasn't enough to have fought for Australia in the Army and the Navy. You'll remember that the armoured cars were part of the Royal Navy, getting court-martialled and wounded along the way, so he joined the Royal Air Force, of course. In June 1941, he signed up as a reserve officer, was sent to Malaya, and appointed adjutant of Air Force Squadron at Lashio in Burma, with the rank of flight lieutenant. Towards the end of the Burma campaign in 1942, he was not well. Having lost some 22 kilos in weight, he wasn't permitted to return to the front and was appointed Command Welfare Officer for the South East Command and was based in Calcutta with the rank of Squadron Leader. His work was administrative and aimed at maintaining the good morale of our force throughout India and Calcutta. He set up canteens at bases, mobile canteens for bombers and fighter stations, leave and rest centres and cinemas, and he arranged concert tours and radio programs. For this work, Squadron Leader Crossing was mentioned in dispatches in 1945. His health continued to deteriorate, and he returned to Australia in late 1944 and was discharged. Resuming his career with the Education Department, first back at Como Primary and then at Cannington, Walter Crossing was an outstanding principal. In those days, every teacher, including principals, was annually assessed and given a teaching mark out of 90. For the last 10 years of his career, until his retirement in 1958, Walter Crossing enjoyed a mark of 89, which was the highest one could receive. It might not sound like much, but nobody ever received 90, and to receive such a mark over this lengthy period was virtually unheard of. Walter Crossing died in 1961, a few months after my dad was born. My great-grandfather was clearly a very clever man, a brave man, and a very talented man, and he devoted so much of his life to doing selfless things. Another very selfless man, who was very relevant to my family, was Lieutenant Archie Campbell of the 2nd Second. An A-grade cricketer and waffle footballer before the war, he was the lieutenant in charge of 7 Section, and was devastated that almost all of his section was wiped out in the war crime that we call the Ration Truck Massacre. Archie played a very important role in my family in that after my grandfather, Warwick Crossing, committed suicide in 1964, leaving his widow and 5 children, Archie stepped up to provide vital support through legacy. When Warwick's wife, Rona, died of leukemia a few years later, my dad and his siblings went to live in Legacy's orphanage in South Perth, Craig House. With the families of Dad's parents somewhat fractured by Warwick's suicide, Archie became a constant male figure in the lives of the little Crossing children. When Craig House was closed when my dad was about to enter grade 7, Archie arranged for the Crossings to go to boarding schools, Christchurch and St Mary's, so that the kids didn't become wards of the state. He arranged with the schools for them to reduce their fees by 1/3, the kids' pensions would pay 1/3, and Archie would pay the remaining 1/3. My dad went to Christchurch as a boarder for 6 years. Things could have been so much worse for him had it not been for Archie. Archie worked in administration at Ampol, and he continued his involvement in sport by being a commentator at the Commonwealth Games in 1962. He was the legatee of several other families as well, providing vital support to the families of deceased service personnel over many years. Moving away now from specific people, I want to conclude with some more general thoughts about selflessness. We, as a society, tend to value high-profile, wealthy, or famous people rather a lot. You don't have to be a doctor, a lawyer, a politician, a rock star, billionaire to make an important contribution to this world. I'm not saying that the higher profile types are bad, but I say we should value military personnel, teachers, nurses, police officers, firefighters, charity workers, childcare workers, etc. much more highly than we do.
Amelia, pause for 1 moment. Okay.
Much more highly than we do. That was not intended to be an exhaustive list, you get what I mean. America has copped quite a lot of flack in recent times, but no, I'm not going down that path. One thing that Americans do better than we do is the habit of thanking military personnel. I would like Australians to adopt the habit of saying thank you for your service, not just on Anzac Day, but whenever the opportunity arises. Going back to nurses, I tip my hat to my mother, Chris Longwell. In addition to putting up with my father all these years and being a wonderful mum, She recently retired from a 41-year career as a nurse. Huge thanks. I want to conclude with a quote that's usually attributed to John Templeton. It's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Amelia. Please welcome Joanna Nesbitt, daughter of 2nd Commando Edmund Burke, who joined the unit in New Britain. Joanna will give us a brief history of the Japanese flag her family recently donated to the association. Joanna and her mother Dorothy have come from Victoria today for the service.
Thank you. Ooh. Sorry. Testing. Distinguished guests, veterans, family members and friends. It's an honour and a privilege to be with you today to pay tribute to my father Edmund Burke, a proud Australian soldier who served with the Commandos in New Britain. I'd like to begin by thanking those of you who have served or who are currently serving our country. The freedoms we enjoy so easily today are thanks to your commitment, dedication and the sacrifices that you make for us. I'd also like to acknowledge the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation on whose land we gather today. Thank you for inviting me to speak about Dad's wartime history and the infamous flag, which many of you may have already seen, and for welcoming Mum and I here today. A brief timeline of Dad's service to put things in perspective. In January 42, he answered the call for volunteers and joined the militia. He was first posted to Infantry Unit 2 Brigade, but before he could be deployed, he was claimed by his older brother Matthew and transferred to his unit, the 4th Division Signals. He was trained as a signalman there. After the bombing of Darwin in April 42, he was transferred to Geraldton by nothing less than a cattle train across the Nullarbor to assist in the defence of Western Australia. He served both as a signalman and as a driver in the Transport Division whilst there. Then in February 43, he was posted to Fortress Signals on Rottnest Island to help install the guns capable of protecting Fremantle from any shelling that may come from the Japanese ships. In April 43, he joined the 2nd AIF and was posted to Townsville as a linesman, once again crossing the Nullarbor in a cattle train. In his notes, he writes that it was on that train journey that he first came across the 2nd unit. Wanting to see action and having had several requests denied for transfers, he was finally given his wish and transferred to the 2nd unit and headed to New Britain. After the Japanese surrender, he served in Rabaul, guarding the Japanese prisoners of war. Like so many of his era, he did not believe war should be glorified, and for many years he struggled with the concept of participating in any events on Anzac Day. It was only after he reconnected with this group that he and Mum began attending the safaris and other events. They created many fond memories from travels with his 2nd comrades, many of which are your relatives. Bluey Bone and Jack Carey are a couple that I remember often being spoken of. So whilst not glorifying his days in action, he got a glint in his eye every so often when he recounted a mischievous story, usually involving some disciplinary action. They range from rolling a truck to riding bareback across the great rivers of northern Queensland to patrol the telegraph lines, crossing croc-infested waters. The best of the stories is his version of acquiring the Japanese flag. Dad told us that at the end of the war, when his unit were guarding the Japanese prisoners of war on their ships in Rabaul, he was dared by his 2nd mates to sneak onto their cruiser, the Kashima, and procure the ship's flag from atop the flagpole. He took up the challenge, which he claimed couldn't be any harder than all the coconut picking he'd been doing for them. When he'd shimmied to the top of the flagpole, in the process of releasing the flag, he was spotted by a Japanese soldier, and the alarm was raised. To escape, he dived from the top of the pole to the waters below with the said flag tucked into his shorts. To this day, he claimed, until his death, he claimed that he broke his back in that dive, even though he didn't realise it at the time. He just knew that it hurt a lot. It was reported that the ship's commander was irate and he demanded a beheading over the incident. Unlucky for me, the Australian Army replied that it had investigated and no culprit could be found. For many years we believed this to be the flag that you now have in your charge that's down the back and framed, signed by members of the unit. However, the silk flag that you have was not typical of the flags used on ships, and there is another flag which probably fits that story more. This raises the question about where this signed flag came from and how did it end up in Dad's possession. Sadly, the true story is lost forever, but we can only assume that he was given it for keepsaking by the unit. For more than 40 years it remained in a glass Pond's makeup jar in the back of his wardrobe, one of the many souvenirs that he brought back and hid. When he brought it out to show us, we had it framed for him for his 70th birthday, and it has hung in his office for more than 30 years, until Mum chose last year to donate it to you to care for it. So whilst there is some confusion about the origin of that flag that you now have in your trust, it tells the story of the many men who courageously fought alongside each other in true Aussie mateship. In Dad's notes that he wrote not long before he died, after much coercion from Mum, he wrote, "The 6 months spent with the 2nd Commandos was the highlight of my army time. It gave me the satisfaction of doing what I wanted, and it was the hardest thing I ever experienced." He went to New Britain as a signalman, where he told his CO that he had had enough of the signals and wanted to see action. His CO arranged for his transfer to the 2nd Seconds, which came with a pay cut of 2 shillings a day, an enormous amount of money in those days. He speaks in those notes of bouncing around like a cork in a flat-bottom barge as they moved up the east coast of New Britain to a new camp near a ball. He was sent to Sea Troop, who were manning the centre point on the neck of the peninsula that they were to guard. It was from here that he embarked on what he claimed to be the toughest and most rewarding experience of his life. They set out on a 5-day patrol to check on the enemy, which turned out to be a 20... Oh, technology's against us today. Ah. I do have a big voice.
Back on?
Yep. They set out on a 5-day patrol to check on the enemy, and it turned into 24 days of torture. It rained incessantly, they couldn't wear socks or underpants, and they had to carry one of their own back on a makeshift stretcher. He notes that he climbed hand over hand up a perpendicular mountain for a whole morning, and on another day walked through knee-deep water so they couldn't be tracked by the Japanese. They turned yellow due to the anti-malarials, and he was sick for several days from exhaustion and starvation when they returned to camp, like many of his comrades. No one was ever really able to engage Dad in any conversation about the war. It was off limits, and out of respect, it was never pursued. When I was in my early 30s and Dad in his early 80s, I had the honour of accompanying him to Gallipoli on an RSL tour. That trip changed my understanding of what Dad went through during his service and deepened my respect and love for him. I spent 2 weeks listening to Dad recount stories with other veterans on the trip. The most memorable was from an 85-year-old war veteran named Fred, who did tell a good yarn, the best of which was about him surviving the sinking of the HMAS Perth. He was taken as a prisoner, and then being the only survivor of a Japanese firing squad. He and 9 others successfully escaped from their prisoner of war camp, only to be dobbed in by the locals and recaptured. They were all put before a firing squad, and as the commander counted down from 10, he stopped at 1 and pulled Fred out of the lineup because he had some radio skills that were useful to them. It's hard to put into words my gratitude to Dad and his fellow soldiers for his courage, his loyalty, for his sacrifice, and for our freedom. A man of outstanding integrity, respect, humility, honesty, and sincerity. A young man whose youth was stolen by war, and a lucky man to have returned to a home of supportive family and community. Thank you, Dad, for showing me what true loyalty and love look like. You were not only brave in war, but brave in life. We remember you with gratitude, respect, and love. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna.
I turned it off.
Thank you, Joanna. Mr. Peter Epps, a committee member and son of Bill Epps, will now read the names of the fallen.
Don Airy, Frank Alford, Ron Alexander, Jeff Joseph Barclay. He served with the artillery in the Middle East for 6 months. He trained as a commando on his return to Australia. He joined the unit, served as a trooper on New Guinea and New Britain from June 1943. Unfortunately, he drowned on the 6th of May 1945 on New Britain. Roy Beardman, Huey Brown, Lindsay Brown, Bob Chalmers, Bill Cheverton, Gordon Chiswell, Harry Cole, Harry Cotsworth, Dick Crowder, Owen Davies, Cyril Doyle, Bob Ewan, Desmond Fallon. He served with the artillery in the Middle East as well, but for 1.5 years. He returned, joined the Commando training, joined the unit and served as a signaller in B Troop from June 43 to September 44. Once again, he was unfortunately killed in a railway incident in Queensland, 20th of October 1944. Bruce Gannon, Ken Hogg, Bill Holly, Phil Hopper, Peter Kemp, Paddy Knight, Tony Lane, Des Lillier, Stan Ludlow, Jack Maley, Laurie Malone, Harvey Marriott, Eric Mitchell, Percy Mitchell, excuse me, Les Moore, Gordon Mulqueeny. He was an original member of the unit, served on Timor in number 1 section. He served from the 8th of December 41 to the 16th of December 42. Came back, they were training in Queensland and unfortunately was killed in a truck rollover on the 22nd of March 1943. Reg Murray, Val Nagel, Jack Northey, Jim Pollard, Don Ramshaw, Keith Richards, Jack Simpson, Andy Smeaton, Fred Smith, Charlie Stanton, Alex Stewart, Bob Swift, George Thomas, Lindsay Thomas, John Walker, Dick Waller, Wally Wardy, Arthur Yates. I was once asked, why do we read the names out of the fallen? The second was a very unique unit. The establishment was only 274 men. So every time someone was injured, wounded or killed, it affected everybody, lest we forget.
Thank you, Peter. Mr. Noel Strickland will now present the President's Address.
Thanks, Andrew. Bit of a hard act to follow those 2 addresses. Thank you, Amelia and Joanna. Fantastic. And part of that is in my address. It's the stories that we keep hearing. We hear our stories amongst ourselves, and this is an opportunity for us to share our stories. So thank you very much. Good afternoon, special guests, ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys. Thank you for your attendance today and for your continued support in keeping the memory of the 2nd Commandos alive. I want to thank the families and friends of the Second for keeping the memory of them alive through storytelling and achievements. Thanks. As reported at last year's service, the association was awarded the Order of Timor-Leste, the highest honour currently awarded by the East Timorese. Established in 2009, the Order recognises the contribution of East Timorese and foreign nationals who have made a significant contribution to East Timor, the Timorese, or mankind in general. The award recognition comes from a lot of hard work by committee members in making applications for awards back as far back as 2018, but what's being recommended is all the work our fathers did from straight after the war, all the building of the memorial and all the other bits and pieces that they did. There are some non-committee members who I'd like to acknowledge for their support of our association and in gaining this award. These include Luke Gosling, OAM, member for Solomon. Luke's been championing our cause in Parliament for a long time, and I get to see him every now and again when I'm in Darwin. Special Envoy for Defence, he is also the Special Envoy for Defence, Veterans Affairs and Northern Australia. And Lieutenant Colonel Paul Pembroke, who was the Defence Attaché at the Australian Embassy in Dili. We also thank Ed Willis and Murray Thornton, who represented the association in Dili last year when the award was presented. And the committee has continued to discuss how we can get the second story into the wider community and have it as part of the bigger story of Australian involvement in keeping the world a safer place. This year, we were fortunate that Malcolm Queckett from the West Australian newspaper wrote a feature article which was published just before Anzac Day. This service, together with our participation in Anzac Day events, continues to promote the second story. We appreciate the acknowledgement we receive during the Anzac Day March from the ABC commentary team. They always give a little bit extra for us, so we do appreciate that. Our efforts to gain formal recognition of the second Commandos continues. We believe that the awarding of formal recognition from the Australian government of this to the unit would be a significant start in getting the story of the second out to the wider community. We are hopeful that we're able to generate some media interest in our story, and this award will prompt the federal government to do something in regard to an Australian award. To this end, we continue to make approaches to state and federal governments to make our case for such an award. We've once again had a busy year. We conducted our annual commemorative service, this one, and at Kings Park, and our usual representation at the Anzac Day March and the Dawn service. We've also attended a number of commemorative services for other units. We've also received the donation of a Japanese flag, which we've heard about, and we do thank the Burke family for that. And we've continued the sales of Ed Willis's book, World War II in East Timor, an Australian Army site and travel guide. There are still some of these available, and you can buy them online if you want to. We also continued to support the awarding of the Double Reds Resilience Award to students in Andrew Hastie's electorate. Andrew's our patron, and to a few schools where our members have donated the awards. Once again, Terry Knight, daughter of Arthur Marshall, has contacted me to confirm that her family has made the award on behalf of the association to a student from Harvey Senior High School. The student's name is Summer Mackenzie Clark Winnard, and the citation reads, "The Double Reds Resilience Award goes to a student who, through determination and perseverance, has overcome past challenges and shown remarkable improvement in her attendance and academic results in 2025. Due to challenging personal circumstances, she missed many months of Year 11, but demonstrated determination in turning things around. Since then, she's shown commitment to her studies, engaged in school activities, grown in confidence as a student and a person. The successes she has had in Year 12 can be attributed to her self-belief, her persistence, her commitment, and the support of her family and friends. The approach she has taken this year has no doubt set her up for success in the future." So it's when we hear stories like this I'm only so glad that we're able to sponsor and support this award. And I think Andrew Hastie's giving the award out to about 30 schools in his electorate at the moment. We've also continued funding. I mentioned at last year's service that we're becoming quite tight on our funds, but we made a commitment last year to support the building of a new school in Darray, and we've paid our last payment of that just a month or so ago. So Darray is where the memorial site is in just out of Dili. So, and there's talk about maybe changing and shifting our memorial to the side of the school. And the framing of the donated Japanese flag. The committee has continued with its decision to put funding of future projects on hold until our funding situation improves. I'd once again ask family members to become more involved in the association, and it's not a huge ask. You know, coming to this service, I thank you very much, and that's a great way to do it. Our numbers seem to be dwindling at the March. I think we were down to about 25 this year. It'd be good to get it up around 30 or 40. And it's interesting, the families who come, I always ask one of the families to carry the banner, and at the end of it, they usually come up to me and say it was quite an emotional experience for them to carry the banner and to go in the march. So if you're thinking about it, please come along. You'd be most welcome. And I know not many people like public speaking, but as you could see from the addresses today, everyone's really so interested in our own family stories, and I suppose today is the beginning of the grandchildren now giving these addresses. So most families here, I'm sure, have given an address over the last umpteen years. So now let's start to think about, because grandchildren do bring a different perspective to how it's affected their lives. Thanks to the committee. We haven't met a lot this year, but we've had a few pretty, not heated, but heavy discussions about the future of the association. And we do make a commitment to keep the association going into the near future. None of us want to see this service end, so you do have that commitment from the committee. Many thanks to those who have contributed today. David, and I'll mention David now. David's been our bugler for more years than I know, from longer since I've been attending these services. And he rang me this morning and said, look, I've had a bit of a health issue and I've got trouble with my lips, which being a bugler isn't a good thing. And he said to me, would you like me to stand down and you play a recording of it? And I said, no, mate, even his best effort's going to be better than a recording. So thanks, David. Thanks for giving us that opportunity. But thank you very much. Jodie Jones, our piper, and Greg and the cadets, and Amelia, Joanna and Dorothy, thank you very much for spending the money coming over here and joining our service today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Noel. Mr. John Burridge and committee member will now recite the ode, which will be followed by the sounding of the last post, 1 minute silence, and the sounding of rouse. Please be upstanding.
They went with songs to the battle. They were young, straight of limb, true of eye, steady and aglow. They were staunch to the end, against odds uncounted. They fell with their faces to the foe. They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them. lest we forget. Thank you.
Please remain standing for the withdrawal of the catafalque party.
Catapult party by the centre. Away, bar.
Please be seated.
Okay, so this concludes our service for today, but before finishing, I'd just like to make a couple of comments. First of all, special thank you to our special guest, the Honourable Phil Twist, MLC, representing Basil Semplis, the Opposition Leader. Mr Paul Shearer, representing David Ayton, President of the Australian Commando Association. Mr Duncan Anderson, State President of RSLWA. Mr Daniel Jackson, CEO of Legacy Perth. Ms Jill Dawson, OAM, President of Rotary of Perth WA. Ms Erica Boyne, Curator of the History of WA Museum. Curator of History, WA Museum. Mr John Cram, Second Commando Association Committee Member, representing Friends of Timor Containers. And I didn't see Angus here, but if he is here, Angus Callender, President of Remembering HMAS Armidale Association. People may not know that we've got a bit of a special bond with the HMAS Armidale Association. The Armidale was sunk just off Timor, getting the men off Timor when they were brought home. And for those of you who know the story, that's where Teddy Sheehan received his VC for still remaining with his machine gun, firing at planes while the ship was going down. So we've got a special bond with them. Other thanks, Andrew Strickland, thanks for doing your job. Well done, I think it's 3 years. Doesn't get a say really, but thank you. David, sorry you couldn't finish it off, but we really look forward to you next year. Thank you. Captain Greg Wilson and the cadets, they really do bring something to the service, so thank you very much. Piper Jody Jones, Louis, once again, keeps things going, thinks on his feet. Amelia, really great address, thank you. And Joanna, thank you. And Dorothy, thank you for coming over. And all others who've contributed to today, thank you very much. Knew it was going to happen, I got a fly. It's all right, I swallowed it. Okay. So thanks to Sue, Peter and Ed once again, helped put the service together. I think that's about 4 or 5 years we've done it now, so thank you. And our committee members, thank you once again for giving up your time. And once again, please families, think about your involvement. Anzac Day March, we'd really like to see lots more there. And like to see lots more younger generation there. Okay, they're most welcome. And we already have some grandchildren taking part. Louis, Andrew, now Amelia. We'll get Amelia onto the committee soon, so things will be good. That's a good job for teachers. Okay, so once again, thanks everyone for your attendance. It really is an indication of the continued support. Quick count of about 80 people here today, so thank you very much. And the and we really can't let this support fade away. You're all invited to the Subiaco Hotel for a drink, so please come down, and it's a good way to share your family stories as well. Thank you all very much. Well done. Thank you.
Sorry guys, anyone who's going, it's in the lobby bar at the Subiaco Hotel. Please see them. Sorry, excuse me. So,